Race 2 of the Euroformula Open Championship in round 4 of the 2025 campaign comes from the Hungaroring just outside of Budapest. 17 laps of racing, or 30 minutes maximum, whichever we hit first. And this is the first of our 2 top 6 reverse grid races, and it will be Nielsen Racing's Ed Pearson after finishing 6th in yesterday's race 1, who starts at the front of the field for this one. And yesterday's race winner, Timothy Kaharczyk, with a bit of work to do from 6th on the grid. Temperatures much cooler than yesterday. No need for the massive ice baths that are lining the back of the garages after what has been a very, very hot couple of days here. But track temperatures only just creeped above 31 degrees. Still early in the day here, 10 to 10 in the morning, but the air temperature a much more comfortable 25 degrees out there. I know that drivers yesterday were really being pushed to the limits with the heat that they were suffering, even in just 30 minutes of racing, and partly a contributing factor to why we saw so many mistakes from drivers, not necessarily flying off the road and running into walls and whatnot, but certainly having to utilize some of the escape roads. Very limited number of escape roads that line this circuit. Chris Stevens in the commentary box alongside me, George Morgan. George, racing action starting for the day, and reverse grid as well.
Yeah, and obviously the track temperature definitely one of the pivotal factors, I think, heading into race 2. If you compare where we were really for race 1 yesterday, 15 degrees of the realm difference alone based on what we're seeing on the track this morning. 31 against where we were at, generally 45 yesterday. I think at our peak, we had just gone past 50 degrees at one stage, which was absolutely unbelievable. But this will read as great news for the drivers out on the Pirelli tyres. They look to try and manage it, because there were many moments for the likes of Yevon David, for example. His pace seemed to just fall off out of nowhere after a very decent early start of the race that saw him gain no less than 4 places right at the very start of the race, but then sunk back down again. He'll be looking for a reprieve this time, but because he started outside of the top 6, obviously we had a few penalties come into play towards the end of the race where laps were deleted, or at the end of qualifying, I should say, meaning that he started 8th on the grid yesterday. Therefore, he starts 8th on the grid again today. He'll be looking for another another fantastic start, and then look to take it right through to the checkered flag in an effort to try and take his first win of the weekend. We'll have to see how this fares in the championship, but first and foremost, we've got to talk about Timothy Kaharczyk, who has been utterly phenomenal, ushering his first win in the very first race of the weekend. The first time he has gone and taken a pole position and then has taken a victory in the same weekend as well. So he has now broken the hoodoo, shall we say.
So Yevon David, I found out, had a crack in his engine block yesterday, which was a contributing factor to his slightly disappointing performance, but not entirely the reason for him slipping back after what was a pretty immense first lap from the Sri Lankan. But as you mentioned, starting outside the top 6 in race 1, so he's not going to benefit at all from any of the reverse grids. And the reason for that is that yesterday in qualifying, Michael Shin was erroneously sent out into the fast lane a little bit too early by one of his motorpark mechanics. That then triggered 2 more motorpark drivers, mechanics, to send out Yevon David and Fernando Barrichello, also too early as well. And we had a very near miss in the pit lane with Yevon David going down pit lane and the Nielsen racing cars being sent out in front of them. So while Nielsen was still fine for an unsafe release, but for going into the fast lane before the session had started, it was Yevon David, Michael Shin and Fernando Barrichello had their best lap times from qualifying deleted. Now, that didn't mean too much for Michael Shin, because he had 2 good laps in qualifying. He was meant to start from the front row of the grid yesterday, but then stalled on the formation lap. So if you're wondering, yesterday we didn't see the start of the formation lap because we were running through our highlights package from the previous round in Hockenheim. And then we were a bit surprised to see a big gap on the front row of the grid where Michael Shin should have been. He went for the back of the grid, managed to get back up to 4th place, which was a great recovery, and just about keeps him 2nd in the championship after Timothy Kaharczyk's 3rd victory of the season. They still trail Yevon David, but it is now just 11 points that cover the top 3 in the championship after victory for that man right there yesterday.
Yeah, Timothy Kaharczyk registering yet another win for him. That makes it win number 2 of the season So, oh no, I should say actually victory number 3, I think, as far as my calculations are concerned. That was, of course, his 3rd pole position as well of the season as well. Rubens Barrichello just giving some final words of wisdom to his son, FIFO, who was right in the thick of the action as well. Managed to overtake Yevon David in the closing stages of yesterday's race as well. Speaking of Yevon David, here he is, the Sri Lankan Lion, once again starting 8th on the grid ahead of the start of race 2 this weekend. Our current championship leader coming into our next race, and of course went through a near clean sweep, where he did get a clean sweep in Podium's Portimao. Spa was solid as well, with a qualifying of P1 as well, his first pole position of the season, followed up with a victory as well after that in race 1, and a victory at Hockenheim. Has taken a win at least once through the course of every weekend we've had so far this season, so we'll look to continue the trend today.
I did ask Fernando Barrichello if he did go to Le Mans to support his brother Eduardo, because we know Rubens was there. And he said, no, he couldn't make it. Well, the plan was to go there, but then he had to go back to Brazil to renew his passport, which I think is quite a valid excuse, really, to not end up going to Le Mans and supporting from within the wings.
Be a bit of a challenge to try
to get back, yeah. Quite. So 11 cars lined up on the field. Finn Green lining up at the back for race 2 in the Euroformula Open Championship. We saw a look as well on the grid just there of Benjamin Berta, the local driver, making his 3rd wildcard appearance here in Budapest. His first for a couple of years, though. He's been racing the previous generation Dallara 320 in the Austrian Formula 3 Championship, which he won last year. His first weekend here in the 324 and the Tom's prepared engine, as well as the grid is being cleared, getting ready to get this race underway.
Yeah, obviously BVM now after yesterday's victory, it means that they've won the last 3 races here at Hungaroring.
Let's remind you what happened yesterday. Big gap on the grid after Michael Shin stalled on the formation lap, and that gave Timik Kahacek a very clear run from pole position for the first time this season. He's been able to get it clear into the first corner, with Jose Garfias settling into 2nd place. Yevon David going right round the outside, making up lots of places, stuffing it down the inside of turn number 3 as well to move up to 4th place. But that was where the celebration stopped, because he very quickly started falling down the order. First of all, running wide on the exit of turn 12, getting nailed around the outside by his American teammate Everett Stack, who went on to the podium. Yevon David tried to hold on to as many positions as he possibly could. We saw cars running wide, struggling in the heat. Later in the race, Fernando Barrichello found his way through on the championship leader as well. But it was of no consequence to Timik Kahacek, who took a dominant 3rd victory of the season, his first from pole position, and he moves to within 11 points in the lead of the championship. There you can see Yevon David, Michael Shin, Timik Kahacek, just 11 points between them. Jose Garfias there in 4th position, just ahead of Ed Pearson, Fernando Barrichello. Everett Stack on 77 points now after his 2nd podium of the season for the Virginian driver. Race 2 here at the Hungaroring, about to get underway. Here's how they line up. It's Ed Pearson on reverse grid pole for Nielsen Racing, and then Diego De La Torre on the front row of the grid. Michael Shin and Everett Stack line up on the 2nd row of the grid. Then comes Jose Garfias and Timik Kahacek, yesterday's race winner. Fernando Barrichello in 7th, and then Yevon David still with work to do from 8th on the grid. Benjamin Berta lines up 9th in the 2nd of the BVM racing cars. Sean Rashid and Finn Green complete the order after what was a very difficult qualifying session for Nielsen Racing. But Ed Pearson able to benefit from the reverse grid after finishing 6th yesterday. The results from this one taken from, the grid for this one taken from the results of race 1. The race 3 grid coming up later today. That'll be the top 6 from qualifying reversed, where none of the Nielsen cars benefit from that one, I'm afraid, as Ed Pearson now leads them onto the formation lap.
Yeah, underway here at Hungaroring now, so it'll be all on Ed Pearson to get the starts. And he'll see this as a great opportunity to now muscle in his first podium of the weekend. And incidentally, looking back, his last podium coming back at Hockenheim in race 1, where of course he did finish 3rd. The victories, though, have been hard to come by. The last time he tasted that was back in our first race at Portimao. And obviously back then he said that Nielsen were definitely a competitive team for the future. We definitely believe that. Obviously just stepping into their first runs here in the Euroformula Open this season with a big future ahead. Of course, a project that they have in mind that is going to span over multiple years. The last time, incidentally, we have had a British race winner here in the Euroformula Open Championship here at Hungary was Josh Mason back in 2023, racing for Crypto Tower, of course, recently involved in that pretty horrific crash back at the Spa 24 Hour where he was driving the McLaren. And good to hear that he was all okay, though I did pop in a message to him just to check in on him. Of course, Mason, a racer here over multiple years. He also went on to win back in 2022 as well, when he was racing up against the likes of Oliver Goethe and Christian Mansell, as well as Vladislav Lomko. But yes, plenty of other drivers looking to also make an impression. Diego Della Torre, keep your eyes peeled on him. It's on his day, a very, very solid talent, I have to say. And obviously, there's a lot of work to do in the championship. Arrived into the first race of the weekend on 49 points. A couple of non-classifieds through the course of the season, 3 of them so far, and then a non-participant as well in Hockenheim in race 1 after the mechanical failure. But elsewhere, he has had podiums before. He did have a 3rd place back at Spa in race 1, so could get a decent run this time. But also, you have to keep your eyes peeled on Michael Shin, the Korean who arrived into the weekend 2nd in the championship, still sits a point ahead of Timek Kaharczyk as it stands, but with the top 3 in the standing within 11 points now after Timek Kaharczyk's victory yesterday. It really does throw up a really gargantuan fight for the Euroformula Open 2025 title.
You would say, of those at the front, Michael Shin has the most to lose in terms of the championship fight. But also, we haven't seen his full potential yet because he had to come up from the back of the grid yesterday after stalling on the formation lap. And so it's all gone well for him this time. And going from 3rd on the grid, of course, he'll have the slipstream all the way down. What is a very long run. It's at least 500 meters. I think it's even closer to 600. Very long run down towards the first corner. So he'll have a great tow from Ed Pearson, assuming he gets off the line well, of course. We know that these cars can be a little bit tricky to get off the line with the carbon clutches that are used at the higher levels of competition as well. So the green flag is waved at the back. The light sequence begins, the engine notes rise, and we are racing for the 2nd time this weekend in the Euroformula Open Championship. Good start by Pearson. He covers off Michael Shin straight away. The South Korean has got a lightning start. He's already pulled to the outside. He's in 2nd place. Can he go for the lead on the outside of the first corner? Pearson locks up his brakes. The Briton runs wide off the circuit and takes Shin with him as well, but they both emerge ahead of the chasing pack as well. Kaharczyk has made a good start. Very nearly contact between the Motorpark teammates as Kaharczyk stuffs it on the inside at turn number 2 as well, trying to take that 4th place away, but the Polish driver does have to settle in behind. Evan David slicing through on the inside and pushes yesterday's race winner off the road as well. Crucially for Pearson, he's held the lead as we head into the 2nd sector.
Yeah, good start as well. Jose Garfias now obviously maintaining himself inside the top 3. Evan David getting another blistering start as well. Now features higher up into P5. 3 places gained from the get-go here, but Ed Pearson really pressurised. Here's a lock-up coming in towards the mid part of the chicane. Everett Stack just getting all tied up on the run with Benjamin Berta locked in behind him too. Finn Green on the back of fellow Nielsen teammate Sean Rashid as those two now dispute at the rear of the field. It is still Ed Pearson. Great start for the Brit. Now maintains his lead in front of Michael Shin, though it was all coming about after the lockup coming through turn 1 as they then made their way through towards turn 2. And there was some aggressive movements there as well from Michael Shin. Again, another lockup presents itself for Ed Pearson as they now beckon out of turn 12. He locks up again coming up through turn 13. So more problems as now Evan David comes under attack. The 2 championship protagonists, Timek Kaharczyk, also in this fight as Evan David ties himself up coming through the gravel trap on the extent coming out of turn 13 through turn 14. Wheel to wheel between him and Diego Della Torre as they now race down through towards turn 1. yet again. Diego de la Torre getting a better run. Here comes Kaharczyk. A look to the inside as well. Are they going to go 3 wide? Not quite. Another lock-up for Pearson. As though Shin tries it up the inside. Has he got a problem? What's causing these lock-ups, Chris?
I mean, his tyres are going to be 50 pence pieces by the time we get halfway through this race. But it's all kicking off for third, with Garfias really struggling to keep everyone at bay. And it is now Yevon David in fourth position, going for a podium spot. Timothy Kaharczyk on the inside of Diego de la Torre as well to take fourth place, where that was getting very close on the exit of the corner as the Mexican stood his ground on the outside line, but there was no resisting in the end. And so Kaharczyk moves through into fifth place. And Yevon David still trying to get this move done on Jose Garfias as well for a spot on the podium.
Yeah, Yevon David, unfortunately, unable to get the move one and done just yet. Obviously, Jose Garfias waiting in the wings. The front two have cleared off, despite Ed Pearson having fun with the brakes at the moment through the early stages of this race. Still maintains the lead ahead of Michael Shin. Jose Garfias down in third as well. Yevon David for company further back as well. Timothy Kaharczyk was also trying his luck. He might have smelt a wisp of opportunity there coming his way down the long straight. Not quite going 3 wide. It looked like Yevon David was going to get the run down through towards turn 1. He's going to try again around the outside, coming in towards turn 12, but just backing out of it for now. But we'll have another opportunity again, a look up of the gravel, I think this time by the 44 of Diego de la Torre, who's currently ahead of Fernando Barrichello at the moment as they come through the final corner at turn 14. Yevon David glued to the back of Jose Garfias' motor park car as well, the Dallara 324 with the Tom's TGE 33 engine. Here comes Michael Shin now on the back of Ed Pearson again, who now drags him along to the very far inside, and now around the outside comes Michael Shin. He's got half a car in front coming through turn 1. A few swappers there as Pearson comes under pressure. Now comes Yevon David up the inside of Jose Garfias. He moves into third, but it's Michael Shin with the lead here at Hungary.
That was rear locking that time for Ed Pearson going into the first corner. He's really struggling with the brake balance on there, presumably because he's been looking the front so much in this race. He's been told, knock it back a bit. He's just knocked it a bit too far back. But great stuff from Michael Shin. I expect him to pull away a little bit now. Yevon David up into a podium place and crucially puts a car between himself and one of his championship rivals as well. Of course, Shin will be closing down. If it were to stay like this, they would be tied on points, depending on who gets the fastest lap, of course, as well. That is currently with Michael Shin, so he'd actually be one ahead as Kaharczyk did 2 wheels into the grass on the exit of the turn 6 and 7 chicane. But Yevon David, he hasn't got much to catch on Pearson, who just seems to be struggling in this race for whatever reason. The braking just not working out for him at all. Wide moment there for Everett Stack by the looks of it, the young Virginian, with Benjamin Berta just behind him. Oh, big lunge on the inside from the Nielsen car of Sean Rashid. Ends up managing to take both of those cars, although Benjamin Berta coming back on the inside. On the outside of the penultimate corner, not able to do anything about that. There's Finn Green trying to usurp Everett Stack as well at the back of the field. And there's Michael Shin, race leader, now 1.8 seconds to the good, but the fastest lap of the race done, purple in all 3 sectors by Yevon David, who is already within 3/4 of a second of Ed Pearson. Make that even less by the time they get out of the first corner.
Yeah, coming into the braking zone, he really dragged his Dallara 324 close to the back of the Nielsen Racing Dallara 324 of Ed Pearson, and now tied together coming through out of turn 2 and now down through towards turn 3. So the game has changed somewhat for the young Brit Ed Pearson, with Michael Shin no longer the direct priority this time, because Yevon David is going to be right at the front end of his thoughts so far, coming through towards turn 5, and the Sri Lankan wonder that is Yevon David, championship leader so far, and has taken us through the entirety of the season so far in great style. Of course, ushering in race wins, as we have so often seen, was carrying a phenomenal podium record coming off the back of his debut in the Euroformula Open Championship at Monza last season, where he became, of course, the first ever Sri Lankan single-seater racing driver winner. And doing a wonderful job as we now watch as Jose Garfias now makes his way through the next right-hander out of turn 11. Now cruising down through towards turn 12 again, and Yevon David plugged in to the back of Ed Pearson so far. Timothy Kaharczyk might also be looking to muster all his talent and raw pace and ability through these final 2 corners to potentially open the door on the run down through towards turn 1 this time. Doesn't want to lose too much in behind Yevon David, because of course he knows that the championship is still very much up for grabs. Really gave himself a shot in the arm after yesterday's win and puts himself in that type of picture. Like we said, 11 points between the top 3 in the series so far. Is now Yevon David now plums to the attack. This time around on Ed Pearson, looks to the inside now with a very, very audacious lunge up the inside as they go wheel to wheel. But Ed Pearson doing enough to defend the place.
Right, he'll have another run here through turn 2. Pearson surely got to keep the defensive line, and well, David thought about it, but didn't end up going through. That's Timik Kaharczyk around Jose Garcia. So the Polish driver, yesterday's race winner, up into 4th position now, ahead of Diego de la Tour. Now, how quickly can he get on the back of Yevon David and Ed Pearson, especially if they continue to squabble? The gap currently is 1.8 seconds between Yevon David and Timik Kaharczyk. We'll see how that ebbs and flows. Another fastest lap of the race done last time around by Michael Shin, by the way, so he's taken that fastest lap point back. And remember, this is crucial because it will determine who leads the championship if Yevon David stays in 3rd position.
Yeah, 13 laps to go, so still plenty of time for action. Timik Kaharczyk now ahead of the 99 of Jose Garfias at the moment, who's now in turn ahead of Diego de la Torre, the 2 Mexicans tying up together as they look to fight over positions as Fernando Barrichello takes a very tricky line over the curbs and licks up some of the grass as well on the left-hand side of the circuit. Currently sat in 7th place behind Diego de la Torre so far, and loses just a little bit of delta off the Mexican in front of him as they now come through turn 13 now and whip around the final corner once again. There is, of course, Garfias, who is now behind Kaharczyk, who is now trying to gain on the car in front of Yevon David, but in turn David far too busy with Ed Pearson in his battle over 2nd place. These two now coming together as they come down through towards turn 1. Not quite close enough to pull off the same move he tried a lap or so ago. Now next time around, a trip through turn 2. Shin, though, is sailed in front now, and it's 4.1 in front, with his last lap being his fastest one.
A clear air is so king because Timik Kaharczyk in his first lap of clean air, purple in the 2nd and 3rd sectors and 1.2 seconds quicker than Yevon David, staring at the back of Pearson. And he's now right with him. It's now 1.3 seconds that covers Pearson, David and Kaharczyk. They make their way into the middle sector. Pearson seems to have got the braking under control now. Whatever brake balance he's been able to find, it's a marked improvement on what it was for those first few laps. But his pace, his raw speed, still not quite there. Lapping 137 last time around compared to Michael Shin, who was in the 135s. So Pearson's still struggling for raw speed, and that is very apparent by the fact that Yevon David and Kaharczyk were able to just cruise up to the back of him once they found clean air.
And building on your points, obviously, with Michael Shin having the clean air, he's got no one in front of him, so he doesn't have to worry at all. He's going to be ushering in those faster lap times. So I will say this, Timik Kaharczyk, purple in the first sector, is now really starting to close on the back of Yevon David. So Ed Pearson currently bottlenecking now. They've got the run coming down through towards turn 1 as a potential option as they now make their way through the final corner. Again, Ed Pearson, 4.5 seconds away from Shin at the top is Pearson right now, as he looks to conclude this next lap with 11 to go here in the races now. Yevon David hops onto the heels of Ed Pearson, Stellara 324. Timik Kaharczyk as well in behind, waiting for his moment to strike as well, but will have to be a little bit patient, as now once again Yevon David forced to remain in behind. Pearson, though, like you so rightly said, seemingly has fixed whatever brake balance issue he did have. Therefore, the lockups are not more paramount this time. So it's good to see him now looking front and centre. Unfortunately for him, though, it does mean that his opportunity at taking the race win here from the reverse pole position, it's not going to happen this time.
Great inter-team battle there. Nielsen, Motorpark and BVM Racing all vying for 2 spots on the podium. And Dallara making more of these 324 chassis available. Tom's providing more engines as well. There are teams that are Euroformula curious, both outside of the championship and inside the championship, looking to add more cars as well. And we're very much looking forward to welcoming new teams and more entries into this championship, because you can see we already have quite the display on, and great battling and great championship fight in there as well. Wide moment there for Jose Garfias in the 5th place car. So the 99 going defensive against Diego de la Tour, the 2 Mexican drivers, the 2 Motorpark teammates as well, going toe-to-toe on the exit of turn 12, but it is still Garfias. You can spot him with the blue helmet and then the yellow, also the black T-cam as well, and then de la Tour there with the more red helmet and the red T-cam. If you zoom in enough on your picture, that's the easy way to spot them apart. Luckily, FIFO Barrichello's got a nice green and white liveries, we can very easily spot him, but it is still Delator chasing Garfias for 5th position in this race.
Yeah, warning shot fired there from Diego Delator, just briefly looking like he was going to cut to the inside. If anything, though, Garfias got the better run coming out of turn 2. Yevon David now starting to drop off a little bit from Ed Pearson this time, as now Fernando Barrichello moves up the inside, this time coming through towards turn 2, wheel to wheel. And I must say, talk about threading the needle, that was a great effort from Barrichello. Somehow managed to find a way through, goes wide coming out of turn 3, on the way up through towards turn 4. Not enough alongside to plant the move, but that was oh so scary for a minute there. But Barrichello doing enough to keep it on the track. Fabulous effort.
Yeah, that was not the width of a Euroformula car on the inside of turn 2, was there really? But he managed to get a little bit of that concrete curving on the inside there just to make it work. I'm amazed he didn't just slew into the side of his teammate.
I mean, that is literally threading the needle right there.
Right, yeah.
Whether it was intended or not, I'm not quite sure, but it looked like it was a half and half.
Ask him later.
Yeah, you'll have to find out later, yes.
Pearson seems to have found a little bit of pace.
He has.
Because he's now lapping low 36s, and actually last time round was quicker than both Yevon David and Timothy Kaharczyk, and he's built nearly a second over the championship leader. So the pace starting to come to Pearson now, and he's settling into that second place. No one's got an answer for Michael Shin at the front of the field, though. He's just done another fastest lap of the race at 35.5. The gap now 6 seconds to Ed Pearson, but it's looking much more comfortable. Game on, though, between Yevon David and Timothy Kaharczyk for the final spot on the podium in the final 9 laps of this race. Remember Hockenheim? These two have already come to blows on a very dicey opening lap in Hockenheim a few weeks ago. And these are probably two of the most popular drivers in the field with the most passionate fan bases as well. So let's see what happens.
Well, there'll be many cheering on Timek, like many will be cheering on Yevon David, both of whom have had their tie-ups. We mentioned Hockenheim. Ring, a big swapper there for Yevon David coming through out of turn 4 as the rear end just got a little bit squirrely heading over the curbs there, and that will, I'm sure, offer perhaps a little array of confidence going in the manner of Timothy Kaharczyk now as they look to fight over the final podium spot. This is giving Ed Pearson plenty now to he could just focus on himself. He's allowing Timothy Kaharczyk to carry this out. You know, you pressurize Yevon David. Take his attention away from me as they come down in towards the final sector once again, rounding the turn 11 section now in towards turn 12 at the heavy braking zone. Timothy, though, just fanning off a little bit, just backing off slightly as they now come through the next right-hander. Of course, Giuseppe Mazzotti flying the flag as team boss for BVM and has done so over multiple years, where, of course, in the past, Francesco Simonazzi was their shining light for the team, battling against, of course, the rampant motor park team that have been so successful over recent years in this series. So you take a look at the replay again. This is Yevon David, just that rear end stepping out, coming out of turn 4. And if there's one location on this track where you don't want that to happen, it is very much there. When you fly up over the hill, it's so easy to get it wrong.
Fearlessly fast part of the racetrack, of course, and very difficult to get one car through there, let alone when we see people attempt side by side through there. We've got yellow flag out at turn 14. That's the final corner, and I believe it is for Finn Green, who's moving slowly down the start-finish straight. So potential rotation out of the final corner. Green flags are waving there. I think we're going to see what happened now. And yeah, he was very wide in the middle of the corner. And Finn Green going around and keeping the Nielsen car out of the barriers. Yes, he did. So no damage done, just managed to get it back going again, and he is on his way, but I think a good 15 or so seconds now off the next car, which is Everett Stack. You can still see that powder, the quick drying powder from a incident in the Carrera Cup Benelux race at the end of yesterday, which hasn't been completely cleared just yet. That's what those white markings at the final corner are, and why there's occasional bit of dust that these cars are kicking up.
Yeah, well, they come through towards turn 12 at the moment. Pearson 7.1 away from Shin right now, but more importantly 1.3 ahead of Yevon David so far as Benjamin Berta currently sits in 9th, being chased down by Everett Stack, who hasn't really just found his mojo through the course of this race. Not the same that we saw from our race 1 visit yesterday, where he did achieve a podium finish of 3rd. And now making his way down the straight once more to begin his next lap. 7 to go here in this race now as we take a look at a Slow-mo replay here of Michael Shin just making his way over the very tight section of turns 6 and 7. Of course, the chicane, you have to be so cautious. Like we said, the track is so narrow. Monaco without walls, the very saying that is, of course, used unanimously across the globe, and certainly in Europe when it comes to visiting the Hungaroring circuit. But when you factor in those heavy braking zones at turn 1, and also on top of that, the run down through towards turn 12 as well, there's also opportunities for overtakes when mistakes are made. And Yevon David with a little moment there again, coming out of turn 4 through towards turn 5. Probably ran a little bit wide, and it's allowed Timo Karcik right back in again. Can't really afford too many of these frailties towards this late stage of the race.
He certainly can't, and at the moment he will be losing the championship lead unless he manages to steal a fastest lap point in the closing stages of this race and hang on to that third position as the BVM garage. Engineer Matteo there on the right-hand side, Timek's engineer, formerly with Francesco Simonazzi, and he was, of course, a very happy man yesterday after pole and victory. But now trying to make it another podium finish for this weekend. And seeing getting around Yevon David is no mean feat. The young Sri Lankan who's been absolutely superb in the early stages of his racing career. But Timo Karcik, about a year older, with a little bit more experience at this level after a couple of years in GB3 competition. He looks to the inside again, but you need to be a bit more wily than that to get around Yevon David. So Timek still on the path to the FIA Formula 3 Championship, as is Yevon David, as are many of these drivers potentially moving up on the road to Formula 1, which of course where many of these guys aim to be. Pearson now 1.6 ahead of this battle, so it is very much a battle for the last spot on the podium. And a wide moment for Yevon David. Is that going to give Timo Karcik the opportunity? He needs to go right around the outside of turn number 5. Very difficult to try and make that one work, but that was a big mistake and very nearly a very costly one for Yevon David, who's still sliding that car around through turn 6 and 7. But there's no way through here. This is follow the leader in this section of the racetrack.
Yeah, that's the third successive time he's had problems at turn 4 as well. It's just not happening for him around that part of the circuit. There's Ed Pearson coming through. This was the moment, sideways and skipping over the curb as well before re-entering before turn 5. And that gave Timo Karcik a leaf, an olive branch of opportunity to move his way around the outside, but just unfortunately could not carry the speed effectively enough in order to move up into third place. Yevon David, I think he can count himself extremely lucky there. He's going to need to try and hang on though again, because it's not enough that Timek still remains behind him. When you venture around this portion of track, the slipstream becomes very beneficial to the driver behind, and no less, I'd imagine Timo Karcik is going to try and use it to great effect as they race down through towards turn 1 again. He stays within the slipstream of the Sri Lankan in front. A look to the inside, just again firing that warning shot, unnerving Yevon David. But we'll have to keep our eyes at turn 4 now, here once again, to see whether this same occurrence happens once more, because Yevon David on full defence now in third place.
5 laps to go then. Still game on for the last spot on the podium. So Diego De La Torre is not giving Jose Garfias quite as much grief in that battle for 5th position. It's De La Torre just settling back a little bit now. Of course, if Timo Karcik were to get a spot on the podium, we'd have all 3 of our teams represented on the podium, with Motor Park leading, then Nielsen, and then BVM, which would be quite a nice stat for the day. Fernando Barrichello there in 7th position. Benjamin Berta acquitting himself very nicely here in his first weekend in this car. Of course, a successor to the car he usually races in the Austrian Formula 3 Championship. His 3rd wildcard appearance here in the Euroformula Open Championship as the local driver here in Budapest. Pearson there in 2nd position. Nielsen Racing going for the podium once again. We haven't seen Pearson on the podium since the first race in Hockenheim. It was not really a well maximised, let's say, weekend for the potential that that team has had. Obviously a very strong start to the season. First race winner of 2025, coming firing out of the blocks, but then you could also argue that win should have been Michael Shin's as well. He spun with only a couple of laps to go from a semi-comfortable lead.
He'll be hoping that he can leave the form after Portimao really at the door and carry on for the remainder of the season. Obviously still plenty of opportunity here for big points to be won, and with Hungaroring providing plenty of spice for the various viewers that of course are tuning from around the world. So I'm sure you all are watching these drivers do battle around the Hungaroring circuit. This is obviously going to continue right through the course of the season. Of course, after Hungaroring, we do have a trip to Paul Ricard. Before then, we head to Red Bull Ring and then Barcelona before Monza becomes the season finale at the Temple of Speed. As we know as Monza to be the home of the Italian Grand Prix, various Grand Prix sites where, of course, we haven't long witnessed Austria host its most recent Austrian Grand Prix. We will, of course, be heading there after Paul Ricard as we now watch as Timo Kárček comes around turn 11, turn 12 coming up very shortly. Ed Pearson now with a gap of 2.2 to Yevon David in behind. It's 9.8 though to Michael Shin in front, who's really been enjoying this freedom and clear air in front as another moment occurs elsewhere. Now that is Diego Della Torre, who has skipped off into the grass just briefly as we now take a look to the front. So Diego Della Torre now disconnected away from the back of Jose Garfias. It was a second before that moment, and it looks like it's going to extend again as the Korean Michael Shin looks to muster up his very best with 3 laps to go here in the Euroformula Open Championship, with a potential championship lead laying itself out for him to grasp. It's getting feisty up at the top end. Remember, the top 3 coming into this race, 11 points between them. We speak of rivalries. We've seen Yevon David coming up against Timo Kárček. We've seen Michael Shin also in the heat of the action. Looking back to Spa, of course, where he came together with Everett Stack in what could have been a better weekend for Michael Shin, and the championship could have looked largely different after Spa as well. He's getting his recompense this time with a huge opportunity to taking 25 points.
And he's still able to lap in the 135s, which no one else is able to do at the moment as well. So Shin's just got so much comfortable speed out there. And yeah, again, if things stay as they are, Michael Shin will take the lead of the championship by 1 solitary point, as he will outscore Yevon David by 11 by virtue of 10 points, 25 for the win, 15 for third, but that fastest lap bonus point as well going the way of Michael Shin currently. And with the pace starting to drop off, can't see that changing in the remaining 2 laps and 1 corner that the race leader has. Kárček dropping off the back of Yevon David now, not quite harrying the rear of the motorpark car as much as he was earlier in the race, and I think he might just have to settle for 4th on this one. We talk about it so much. It is difficult to make an overtake here work, even with this long start and finish straight. But Yevon David, who's able to comfortably pull clear out of the last corner and not be under too much pressure. Looks like Fernando Barrichello's lining up a pass here on Diego Della Torre for 6th position. Down the inside goes the Brazilian. Della Torre fighting it around the outside. Barrichello says that you're not having space on the outside, so Della Torre goes out wide. Barrichello himself ran off the circuit as well. Down into turn 2, Della Torre tried to retake that place, but no way through. So that's Fernando Barrichello now up into 6th place, bagging himself an extra couple of points.
Yeah, nice move, at least to move up into the top 6 now for Fernando Barrichello. Diego Della Torre, though, will have his chance to fight back. We're still with 2 laps to go here in this Hungaroring race. And quite the gap then to Jose Garfias. Remember, of course, Diego Della Torre had with that little moment in the final sector lap or so ago, which, whilst he was just inside a second, in fact 9/10 away, there's Rubens Barrichello now. I'm sure was quite content with seeing the move done by his son FIFO, who now moves into 6th place and chasing after Garfias.
At what point in your life do you stop going to your own races and just go around the world watching both of your sons race as well? Because he attends all the World Endurance Championship races as well for Guado.
He still races in Brazilian stock cars, though, at the same time. Does
yes,
Rubens.
he does, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Is he still doing that this year?
Still very active this year with that. Obviously, I caught up with Rubens earlier on this season, and obviously here watching FIFO at work, but has been a applying his trade, as he always does in the Brazilian Stock Car Championship. And, of course, we remember back to his cameo visit to the Temple of Speed not too long ago in the International GT Open, partnering up with Giuseppe Cipriani in the Il Baroni Rampante team. And remember still, but Rubens Barrichello holds the lap record around Monza in a Formula One car, I think, believing back in 2004, unless I'm otherwise mistaken, for Ferrari. And now, not only that, went fastest again in qualifying with Il Baroni Rampante out of everyone else on circuit. So some things never change.
Half a lap to go then for Michael Shin. He's 11.4 seconds clear of the chasing pack, and he's been absolutely superb since he took the lead very early on in the race from a struggling Ed Pearson. Even if he didn't then, he would have done it eventually. And now on course for his second victory of the season. It could have been more at this point. Obviously, we alluded to what happened in Portimao as well. There have been some missed opportunities, but Shinny is definitely making up for that right now, isn't he? Only 2 corners to go then for the South Korean, the 20-year-old who's in his second season here in the Euroformula Open Championship. And it is going to be another win, a second victory of the season for Michael Shin here in the 4th round of the season at the Hungaroring. And with it, the championship lead as well. Ed Pearson will eventually come across the line in 2nd place. There is the Nilsson Racing car from pole position, struggles early on. Yevon David across the line in 3rd place. And now 1 point behind Michael Shin in the championship. Timmy Kaharczyk in 4th position, ahead of Jose Garfias. Fernando Barrichello in 6th. Diego De La Torre there in 7th as well, ahead of Sean Rashid, Benjamin Berta and Everett Stack as well. What a win for Michael Shin, our new championship leader by my mental arithmetic. Of course, we'll get confirmation of that when we go through the results. A second victory for Michael Shin, and after multiple podium finishes as well. So often has finished second, 5 times he's finished second this year, and now his second win as well. 11.9 seconds ahead of Ed Pearson, and Yevon David completing the podium. Timmy Kaharczyk from 6th on the grid, settling for 4th ahead of Jose Garfias, and Fernando Barrichello with that late move on Diego De La Torre, and Sean Rashid, Benjamin Berta, and Everett Stack completing the top 10. At the rear of the field, Finn Green after that spin we saw at the final corner. So we see Pearson going past there. Did manage to find some speed, did the young Brit eventually in that race. I'd love to see the state of his tyres after so many lockups on the right side, left side, and the rear locking we saw as well as he was fiddling around with the brake balance, trying to get that sorted. But what a day for Michael Shin so far. And obviously making up for the disappointment of yesterday's stall on the formation lap.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Michael Shin, as we mentioned the term cathartic, is now he goes very wide off the edge of the circuit, just allowing the other cars through. Maybe just trying to pick up some rubber as well on the tyres as he makes his way back to the pits. But a fantastic victory for Michael Shin, and yes, a victory that I'm sure has been long awaited since Hockenheim in race 1. It took a while to get there because, of course, he had a train of 2nd place finishes back at Portimao, where he was knocking on the door of a victory. Of course, remember spinning the tyres at Portimao in the opening race that led to Ed Pearson managing to clamber for P1 as well to get his first win of the season in his very first race. Pearson, obviously, I think will be feeling happy about returning to 2nd spot on the podium for only the 2nd time this season. It last happened back in race 2 at Spa-Francorchamps, so Pearson will be delighted with that, as will the rest of the Nielsen team. And Yevon David back to where, well, more where he would need to be, but there were a few uncomfortable moments there for the Sri Lankan after a successive of 3 occasions heading through turn 4, where the car almost betrayed him at a certain point, and it meant that Timmy Kaharczyk was, you know, handed a leap of opportunity, a potential move into the podium places. Of course, he will lose points against Shin and David now as a result of this race, as now the congratulations comes through from Ed Pearson. Now Michael Shin will pop himself out of the car, and a feeling that I'm sure has been long awaited. And there we have it. Michael Shin's victorious once more here in the Euroformula Open Championship. And now, speaking of the championship, the points have definitely been blown wide open. It is going to be between certainly the top 4. They're getting closer. Long await race 3 later on this weekend.
It's not quite as good as the sitting on the car doing the meditation.
The very zen moment.
Yeah, the very zen Michael Shin, who won in Hockenheim, but another good celebration there for the South Korean.
Fantastic moment, and obviously celebrating with the rest of his team at Motor Park. And he'll look ahead to race 3. The job is not yet done, of course. The weekend still offers points. Congratulations from Kai as well, the engineer at Motor Park, obviously. Yevon David, all smiles on his face still, despite obviously the few challenges he had out on circuit. He'll, I'm sure, be looking to come back again. But one thing he'll take solace from is the 2 phenomenal starts he has had off the line. He gained 3 places right on the very first lap, and then, of course, 4 in the race before.
Top 3 then from race 2 in Budapest. Yevon David once again on the podium for Team Motor Park from 8th on the grid. Second place from reverse grid pole is Ed Pearson. Nilsson Racing back onto the rostrum after a difficult round in Hockenheim. But now Michael Shin for the 2nd time this season, the winner here in Budapest. Let's hear from him.
Michael, well done, another victory. How was it? The beginning of the race quite interesting.
Yeah, it was tricky to get the tires in because the temperatures were colder than it was yesterday. So the first few laps, you know, the fronts didn't really come in, and I had to work to get them. And afterwards, it was about navigating through the dirty air and trying to get a move on Edward. He did an excellent job defending, but luckily I was able to find the gap and go for it.
And now the situation in the championship is really nice, interesting.
Well, yeah, as I said before, I'll keep doing as I'm doing. You know, thinking about the championship's not going to help me move forward, so I got to think about maximizing my own performance.
Well done for now. Enjoy it.
A sensational victory for Michael Shin. Let's look back at how we did it. It was Ed Pearson who started on reverse grid pole, the Briton getting away very nicely, but Michael Shin from 3rd position got away even better, towing the Nilsson Racing car and then pulling out alongside. He certainly challenged Pearson, who was really struggling with the brakes in the early stages of the race, locking up into the first corner, both of them running wide as a consequence. Shin pursued Pearson for a little bit as he struggled to get his brake balance correct, eventually getting the move done around the outside of the first corner. Pearson had his brake bars a little bit too far rearward. Yevon David also slicing through on the inside at turn 1 to take 3rd place, where he would stay for the remainder of the race. Big moment there for Sean Rashid as he lunged on the inside at turn number 12. Fernando Barrichello also took it to his Motorpark teammates, passing Diego de la Torre late in the race for 6th position. Running off the circuit was the Mexican there after a tussle with Jose Garfias earlier in the race as well, his teammate and countryman, but that was Barrichello through safely. Michael Shin up towards the timing line, 10 seconds clear of the rest of the field, and his 2nd victory of the season with the fastest lap as well that gives him the championship lead. Let's confirm those points then. So it is Michael Shin by 1 point ahead of Yevon David, and now Timothy Gajek 15 behind Michael Shin after his 4th place finish there. Ed Pearson moves up to 4th in the standings ahead of Jose Garfias and Fernando Barrichello as well, still there in 6th position with Sean Rashid down in 9th position there as well. Already on to the podium then, and it is a 7th appearance, I believe. No, an 8th appearance on the podium for Yevon David so far in 2025. A 5th of the season for Ed Pearson, and a 7th as well for Michael Shin. 6 times on the podium, his 2nd time now on the top step out there. As we have the Motorpark representative up there as well. Of course, Yevon David also taking the rookie class win. Here's the South Korean national anthem. Well done to Michael Shin, our new championship leader. Of course, George, completely different podium to what we had yesterday. 3 new drivers up there for this race.
Absolutely, and 2 of them, of course, being our title protagonists, really. The top 3 are starting to break away from the rest of the field as Yevon David accepts his 3rd place trophy. He'll be looking for something a little bit more to end the weekend. Incidentally, if he doesn't get the victory, of course, at the end of play here today, that'll be the first time that he hasn't actually grasped a victory in a single weekend so far this season, Yevon David, as Ed Pearson accepts his 2nd place trophy as well. A fantastic return for Ed Pearson and Nielsen Racing as the Pirelli representative presents the winning trophy to Michael Shin, and by a single point, your new championship leader in the Euroformula Open Championship.
Of course, Yevon David only been off the podium on 3 occasions so far this year as well. And you're right, it's weird. So far this weekend, we haven't heard the Sri Lankan national anthem. It came in race 3 in Hockenheim, but of course, he's got work to do again because he's still starting in 8th position as well. And around here, that's going to be very, very tricky, of course. The rookie class trophy going to Yevon David there as well for the drivers under the age of 18 coming from lower performance series. So the drivers will pose for the photographs. And we will have one more race to come here in the Euroformula Open Championship, the 2nd of our top 6 reverse grid races. Lights out for the final race of the weekend is at 4:40 local time. We'll see you then.